everybody. I'm Jeff Young. I'm director of camps at Music for All. So, Box 5 has asked me to speak a little bit about the concept of not skipping steps. And I've given this clinic various places. I do some consulting and clinic work with bands and with music educator associations. And one time I decided that I would name my clinic "Don't Skip Steps." And this clinic was made for band directors, but I think it's appropriate for parents and students and band directors to all hear what it means to not skip steps. And what I mean by that, when you're watching or listening to a great marching band, you start to notice things that aren't quite right about it or things that are really good about it. But what you have to do is kind of look way back in time when things started, when the season started. How did that group get to where they are today? You might be watching a group in the middle of the season and they're pretty good and they're on their way to being great, but how did it all start? And what were the choices that were made along the way? So Don't Skip Steps is all about that process. I'm not sure I really discovered this process of don't skip steps. It was more like being around really good teachers for a really long time and doing this activity for long enough. You start to notice what works and what doesn't work. Not everyone's cut out to be a teacher. A lot of people have knowledge about certain subjects, but having the patience and the technique for properly teaching students is something that not everybody is good at, and most people would admit that. But one of my high school band director was Richard Saucedo. He does a lot of writing and teaching and judging, and just one of my mentors over a long period of time. And as I watched him teach, I really feel like this was an important part of what we were getting from him as a head director. And so, although I didn't come up with it, I was a visual, and I currently still am. I teach visual, marching and movement, and I go in and teach clinics and consult with groups on how to do that. And we do a lot at the summer symposium, which is, so my title is at Music for All is director of camps. And that means the summer symposium in Muncie, Indiana every summer. And students and directors from all over the country come to us to learn for the week. And I think no matter what division of camp or what group I'm working with, I'm always thinking about, what is the sequence of things that students need to learn and in what order. And that's also something that I teach to directors sometimes in clinics is, we always talk about the same example, is that you wouldn't want to take calculus as a freshman in high school. It's really important to take algebra and then geometry and then pre-calculus and then calculus. It's not that some students aren't able to take calculus their freshman year, but most people need that sort of that road to go down where they're learning math and they're scaffolding. Like, when you set up scaffolding on the outside of a building that's being renovated, you can't put the top floor up first. You have to build that scaffolding from the ground up. And that's something that we think about on the musical side of marching band and on the visual side of marching band. And that includes color guard and percussion as well. So one of the things that I think about in terms of marching and movement is we start with posture and physical fitness, which really isn't marching at all. There's no moving and dancing and marching involved in it. It's just, how do I stand up straight? And why is it important for us to stand up straight? And then, looking at, the fundamentals of body movement and dance that have been around forever. Before marching bands ever existed, people were dancing. And so we look at, what are the fundamentals that you need to know first about how your body works? And then we look at, are our students in shape enough to start a marching band season? And in most cases, the answer is no. They haven't marched since last season. And so we spend a great deal of time on pretty simple body weight. We're not asking them to go out and run a 5K right away, but there are some groups who, including groups that I work with, we start with some body weight jogging in place and stretching and proper ways to stretch the body and strengthen the body. So you might think that a senior in high school, for example, would be frustrated by going back to square one every year. But the reality is, from a marching and movement standpoint, these students haven't marched and moved since the last time marching band happened. So Grand National Championships are in early November. And a lot of the band camps start again in June. And so that's quite a while, 6 or 7 months in there where no one is marching. Now, we don't really start over with music every year, though, because most students after marching band season are playing their instruments in concert band and jazz band and pit orchestra and all the other fun parts of being in band. And then marching band starts, and we just keep playing the instruments. In color guard, you may have a portion of your fall color guard that decides to do winter guard or private lessons on flag and rifle and saber, but some of them don't end up doing that, at least at a competitive level, depending on the school. So sometimes in the color guard area, you're starting over and starting with those beginning steps again. In percussion land, um, maybe somebody is playing a marching snare drum for the first time that season and they're a senior. You got to start at square one again. And so starting at square one is not a punishment, and it's not a boring thing that we have to do. It's more like everyone understands that each season, so everyone pretty much understands that each season is, we're all going to start from scratch on some parts of this. And it's important for the freshmen to see upperclassmen learning alongside them with the same steps. You know, um, F concert, for example, playing your first note on your instrument is something that students did in sixth grade. We still focus on how F concert sounds and the timing and tuning and attack and release of the note and tone quality. All that's still important when you're a senior in college as a music major. So it's not always frustrating for the students. It is sometimes frustrating because spending time on fundamentals just is frustrating. It's frustrating to see that the end goal of the season is far away, and all you see is it's hot and we're tired and it's long rehearsals and we're doing F concert and one step forward again. Um, and so you just have to keep reminding students that by the end of the year, all of that fundamental training early on pays off. You got to kind of wait for the payoff, which is not what students these days are used to. We're used to instant payoff on things and instant gratification. You might be listening to this and you're thinking, my program is not a top level program, or the program that my student is in, or the program that I'm in is not a top level program. And we don't have that kind of excellence. And only the top groups have that kind of excellence and are able to take the correct steps. And I would push back on that and just say, I've seen lots of really small rural groups that don't have a lot of resources, but are still able to follow the correct steps. And not that there's one correct way, but following a system of steps that teaches the students fundamentals in an order that allows them to get better at each skill before a new one is layered on, to where you watch that group and you're like, that's a small band, but they are really, really good. And what happens is then that next year you have juniors, sophomores, and freshmen who move up to sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and they model the behavior of the previous group. And then that continues and continues and continues. When you see the groups who perennially are champions and who make finals at contests, they didn't just magically get there. Many times that's a multi-year or decade process where they're doing the correct steps, and this is especially helpful if the same staff stays at a school for a long time and they're doing the right things, so that over time you end up all being on the same page with what is our way of doing things, and this is how we do it. And over time, then when a freshman comes in, all they see are everyone here understands the process except me, and I'm just watching it and I just have to just join in on that process. What's really challenging are groups, with new staffs and groups that have lots of turnover, to where maybe it's a different process each year for a few years, and students never get in the groove of this is how we improve on our playing and our marching in a way that makes sense. So the summer symposium, which is what I'm in charge of for Music for All, is an opportunity for students from all over the country to come in. And if you look at the color guard division at the summer symposium, which is led by Susie Harloff, She takes students where they are and teaches them the steps of how to improve on the flag and on dance and on weapon. And over the course of a week, they might not go home a million times better than when they started, but they go home with the sequence of steps that they can use once they get home to get better. And the same thing with the Director Academy at the Summer Symposium that Nola Jones is our division head of. We teach the teachers, and we had almost 200 teachers from all over the country come in this summer and take classes from some of the best teachers in the activity. And each one of those sessions was about you know the steps that those master teachers take. So again, in a week's time, you're not going to magically be a better band director, but you're going to be given the steps to go home and go through those steps with your own group over a year and over many years, to get better. So I think it's a really nice incubator for students and directors to be able to work on what are those steps that make us better. So what does it look like when you don't go in the correct order? What does it look like if you skip steps? And I'm going to use an analogy because I like to do that as a teacher. So imagine you move into a new home and you unpack your clothes and you unpack your furniture and you're like, this is home now. But you didn't unpack any of the kitchen and you didn't go grocery shopping. And so your kitchen is empty. That is what a lot of programs do by just quickly learning an entire show. Like, here's all the music, here's all the drill. We're going to get it out there. And, it's midsummer and we know our whole show. Okay, but there's no nutritional value there, right? You have nothing to eat, right? So you have to go back and fix all of the problems that happened while you were learning it. And so, I think that analogy is just all about, hey, when you move into your new place, make sure that you're remembering about the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of groups will their only goal will be to unpack their furniture and their clothing, whereas just unpacking a little bit of all of it at a time is kind of more like the steps that we go through, to where we would never teach at a program that I teach at. We would never decide to learn 80 pages of drill without learning how marching works. There's a lot to it on the field. There's forward marching, there's backward marching, there's side to side marching, there's dancing. When it comes to playing, there's attacks and releases and toning and tuning. Or, I'm sorry, tone quality and tuning. And so, what we like to do is give them as many of the things that might come at them in a show before they ever learn a page of the drill. And that's hard because a lot of directors, they feel the pressure of time, and that's like the band director against the calendar. But you have to, when you trust the process, that the more proficient a student is at playing and marching, the easier it is to teach the show. So parents, if you're watching this, thank you for being a part of your student's life, and being interested in what they're interested in. That's really important. And there are steps that you can take as well in a certain order, and that's getting involved with your high school program and helping where help is needed. And skipping steps for parents would be like butting in when it's not your call, or trying to make decisions when it's not your place to make that particular decision. Band directors love to have feedback, but there are some times where people overstep their bounds. So I think the don't skip steps works for parents as well. It's just, talk to the director if there's a problem. Don't go to the administrator or the principal or the, like the president of the United States to solve a problem. Go through the right steps and talk to people, and offer your help as a volunteer. Maybe you could, be a chaperone, or wash uniforms or sew flags or whatever. If you're a student, just be aware if you're trying to skip steps. Be aware if you're trying to be a leader of your section when you're not maybe there yet. Be aware if you're skipping right over your section leader and trying to make a decision for your section that's not appropriate, for your skill level or your age level. As if you're a band director, just be aware of the steps that you took to get to where your band is today, and just be honest with yourself. And what can you do? Can you go to the summer symposium? Can you go to the Midwest Clinic? Can you go to your state music educator association sessions? And what are some ways that you can learn to maybe slow down and make the steps in the correct order to make your band proficient and excellent? I hope you enjoy the rest of the performances on this broadcast. And this is a great time of year, a very exciting time of year for band students and parents and directors of band students. And just enjoy the show.